Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, my entitled neighbor demanded I cut down my ancient tree and insists it is ruining her property. Karen then ends up hiring a crew to cut down my tree, which was the biggest mistake she could have ever done. I sued her for everything she has. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the story. The first one starts like this. So there's a tree in my backyard that had proven to be more trouble than it is worth. Not just for me, but for my neighbor as well. But mostly for me, as the Karen next door was quite adamant in informing me on how inconvenient the tree was. It would not be so bad if the tree was placed to one side or right at the back where it wouldn't be in the way, but neither was it situated neatly in the middle of the garden, but to one side as if someone just threw it down without any thought about how in the way it would be. It grew out to hang just over the neighbor's fence, which Karen did not like one bit. I don't know why exactly, as the shade did not fall onto their property. I got the impression that they were a little bit entitled and liked to get their own way all the time. Things only really escalated when they had a conservatory extension installed and the branches scraped on the glass whenever it got windy. That tree was probably the sole reason me and Karen never got on, though I don't think I would have spoken to her much anyway. She seemed quite snobby and the other neighbors along the street had equally bad things to say about her. She made the neighbors across the road trim their bushes down because she did not like how high they were growing, making the claim that we were a community and high bushes do nothing but cut us off from one another. She did not like children playing out in the street either, saying it was too dangerous. Being a cul-de-sac, we did not exactly get a lot of through traffic anyway. There was one time some kids were playing street hockey, having a good time, when she comes storming out of her house and without a word, takes the kid's puck and storms back into her house. I'm pretty sure she still has that puck. It's probably hung up as a trophy or something. I also recently found out that the postman had accidentally delivered a couple of my letters to Karen, who, instead of putting them where they should be, shredded them and dumped them in the recycle bin. At least she recycled them. But anyway, this tree, it turns out, is one of the protected species that you cannot cut down, which explained why it was situated in such an awkward spot in the garden. I am quite grateful that I did not let Karen bully me into cutting the thing down, else I would have been paying off a hefty fine. I figured Karen knew this as well, which is why she never trimmed the branches back herself. So when she did what she did, I wondered what exactly she was thinking or how she thought she would get away with it. So basically, I traveled out to see my folks over Thanksgiving last year, as I had always done since I left home. That only changed when I met my wife and we would alternate between her folks and mine, but this year it was my folks' turn. It was all business as usual until we returned home and found that most of the street around my house and Karen's had been turned into a construction site. I had no idea what was going on, and obviously I was more worried that something bad had happened to my home. I would have been majorly inconvenienced as the wife's brother was coming over for Christmas with nieces and nephews in tow. There was a skip out on Karen's driveway and it was full of wood and glass, and I mean full of wood and glass. I could hear the buzzing of a chainsaw too. Now, I had no idea what to think, but the sound of a chainsaw instantly made me think that someone was cutting down my tree, and I could not think of what the skip had to do with anything. Coming out into the backyard, I found a scene of utter devastation. There was a jagged stump on my lawn where the old tree had once stood. It was now laid out not only over my garden, but over Karen's as well. If you remember, I said that Karen had a conservatory installed and the tree branches constantly rubbed against the glass. Well, there was no conservatory anymore. From what I could tell, someone had tried to cut the tree down, probably at Karen's demand, and botched it. The tree fell through Karen's conservatory and trashed her entire garden. My garden, on the other hand, was fine, other than a jagged stump. There was a couple guys cutting the tree up and Karen looking ashen as she picked through the rubble of her own making. I could not help but laugh, which infuriated her so much more. She immediately started to lay into me, claiming that this was all my fault and that if I had not trimmed the branches like she had asked, demanded with threats more like it, this would have never happened. I told her I would not be held accountable for her actions, and whatever the case, she obviously trespassed onto my property and vandalized my tree. It is only karma that her conservatory got trashed because of it. I maybe should not have provoked her because 2 seconds later she is on the phone to the police saying that I had trashed her house with a tree. I can imagine the confused look on the copper's face as she loosely explained what had happened, and the police were so quick coming around, no doubt they wanted to see for themselves. We ended up all having to go down to the station to give statements, me, Karen and the 2 guys who had tried to chop the tree down. Given that I had been away for a few days, my statement was brief and I could only leave after only an hour, but there was no way I was gonna let Karen get away with this. So then I asked about suing her for damages. It took a while, but I got a letter through the post asking me to attend a court hearing in reference to the statement I had made. The details were thin, so I just assumed that it was gonna be me versus Karen bit, but it was so much more. That was when I found out that the tree was a 300-year-old sequoia that was under a tree preservation order. I did not grasp the scope of the situation until the end when Karen was slapped with a huge fine, including of course the sum what I sued her for, which was only enough to remove the stump she had left behind and repair my fence. All in all, she had to pay roughly $415,000. And yes, I do remember the look of daggers she kept giving me during the court hearing. When you are called into a county court as a witness, you are brought into a room and kept separated from everything, but once you had done your time at the docket, you could go anywhere you wanted, so I went and sat in. Karen saw me and she just stared bloody murder at me. I guess she must have blamed me for the whole ordeal. It's not like I made her cut down an innocent tree. When the judge passed his verdict, Karen lost it, like properly lost it. I've never seen anyone go from 0 to 100 before, but she directed all that ire towards me, and right there, in the middle of the courtroom, she launched herself at me. I could not believe my eyes. This seething mass of Karen trying to scramble over the gate thing they have in the courtroom. All the security guards were trying to contain the jiggling monstrosity, aka Karen. I did not know what to do, if I'm honest. I just froze as Karen tried to claw at me with her acrylic nails. It was the most surreal experience of my life. The security guards managed to get her to the ground before they reached me. The judge was banging away with his gavel like a man possessed. The screeching Karen was making was something else, and the obscenity too. She was threatening to sue the guards even as they cuffed her and dragged her away. Long story short, I'm having to go back into court as a witness for another court case Karen is being tried for. As satisfying as it is to see someone get their just desserts, I'm actually quite scared to go face to face with She-Hulk again. And the next one is titled, I refuse to help my neighbors. Am I the butthole? So my father bought our house in the 80s and held onto it as different developments sprung up around it. I inherited it 3 years ago and have been living in it since. I got 2 acres while my surrounding neighbors have maybe half an acre if they are lucky. The house is fairly small, 2 bed, 2 bathrooms, so I have a very large front and backyard. I use maybe 1/5 of the backyard as a garden and the rest is basically an empty field. I have always loved kids, so I was happy to let my neighbor kids play in the field with the understanding that they would respect the property. Most of the kids are great, very respectful, and understand that this is not their backyard. The problem is with my neighbors to the right. They have kids which are female 1, male 3, male 5, female 5 and male 7 who generally run around unsupervised. They don't come to my yard to play very often unless the other kids are playing soccer or baseball. The 7-year-old is in charge as much as a 7-year-old can be, but obviously he cannot replace parental supervision. 5 days ago, the kids were playing baseball and he must have lost track of the 5-year-olds at some point, because when I came home from work, I found their names sharpied onto my wall. Name and name were here. Along with some rude drawings, a man pooping, several piles of poop, that sort of thing, all along the right side of the house. I found their parents the next day and asked them to pay for the paint I will need to cover it up. They were very offended, accused me of lying, and said that they were not gonna pay for this. If this had been all, I probably would have let it slide and covered the paint since it would only be like $20. However, later that day, male 5 decided it would be funny to throw rocks at my house. There are several dents in the siding where the rocks hit and 2 of my windows are broken. From what I've been quoted to fix it, it is about $800 to $900 worth of damage. I talked to the parents who accused me of doing it myself to make their kids look bad, and well, I've decided those 5 are not allowed to use my yard until the damage is paid for, which I think is more than fair. So, when they came by this morning to play soccer with the other kids, I politely explained the situation and said that they would have to leave as they are not allowed to play here anymore. The 7-year-old was very upset, more sad than a temper tantrum, which is understandable, but the 5-year-olds were very angry. About an hour later, their mom came by and cussed me out, yelling at my doorstep about how I am a horrible person who hates children because I'm supposedly bitter and cannot find a husband. I am standing my ground either way, but a few other parents came by and seemed a little frustrated by my explanation as to why that family is no longer welcome, which is making me question things. Am I the jerk for banning them from playing here? Added, to answer some common concerns, I'll be installing cameras. I dug my dad's old trail cams out of the garage, so I will put those up either tonight or tomorrow. And by the way, I am aware of the liability issues with kids playing in my yard. I'm willing to risk it. I don't want to put up a fence, I think they are ugly. The property line is clearly marked. I will not be banning the entire neighborhood unless I absolutely have to. Edit number 2, I also have a meeting scheduled with my attorney to discuss the possibility of drawing up a liability waiver for the parents to sign. I forgot to put that in the last edit. Edit number 3, I have been temporarily banned, but if you have a question, I likely answered it somewhere in the comments, so look at my history. And yes, I have called CPS, they think everything is fine. The 5-year-old boy was still throwing the rocks when I got home. Several other kids in the neighborhood also let me know what happened. That's how I know it was him. Edit number 4, they are also usually supervised. Typically there's a parent or 2 hanging around anyway, and I work from home, so the kids know to knock on my door and ask me to watch them if their parents are busy. I'm also looking into an umbrella policy that would be more likely to cover any injuries that occur. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I would love to hear from you. Do you think that OP is the a-hole here or not? I think he is absolutely not the a-hole, however, I think he should definitely get a fence for the property. That certainly would also not make him an a-hole, but either way, let me know what you think, and now a commenter said, not the a-hole, not one bit. I'm worried that this might escalate and the family will cause further damage to your property simply out of anger. I would get some cameras set up if I were you to protect yourself and so you have definite proof if and when there is a next time. Another comment, you are the a-hole for not calling the police. Are you really just gonna eat $800 and not allow them in the yard? How about they pay and they are still not allowed over, and if they come, you call for trespass? And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you enjoy these neighbor am I the a-hole stories, because usually I don't really do am I the jerk, but when the story is interesting, I might do it. So let me know what you think about it, because to be honest, I am here to please and I don't want to read stuff that you are not interested in. Either way, I would very much appreciate it if you could like the video, because that would help me tremendously in regards to the algorithm. Thank you so much. The next one is titled, Idiot Blocked My Driveway. This just happened. In fact, I'm still a little pumped of adrenaline of such a little act. What a rush. So basically, I live on a street connected to an elementary school. Other residents, including myself, have issues on weekdays around 3:30 p.m. that parents will be parked all along our street to go pick up their kids from the school at the end of it. There's no problem with that, as I expected. We have a guy named Terry on our street. Terry had left all the neighbors a business card saying that if any people blocked their driveway, to call him immediately and he would tow them right away. He is basically on standby from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. in our neighborhood. Which, by the way, Ripe Stars, seems like a very smart business idea if you ask me. Anyway, I never had a chance to use this card yet. The only issue for me is that I finish work at 2 p.m. and I go get groceries and usually end up home around 3:30 p.m. A few times now I have come home to park in my driveway and there is a vehicle completely blocking me. AKA, instead of parking on the curb, they will park at the end of my driveway and make it unable for me to park in. So I have to ask the owners to move. Today specifically, there was an old Dodge minivan blocking my driveway. When I then got out of my car to knock on the tinted window, I realized no one was in. I thought maybe they are napping in the back while they wait, but well, nope, that was not the case. No one was in the vehicle. I could not get into my driveway. This is specifically annoying because the curb behind and in front of him were both vacant. Maybe they were not vacant when he parked there. So then I got the card out of my glove compartment and called Terry. I gave him my house number, and in less than 5 minutes he had that bad boy towed out of there. So what happened next? Well, I decided to start cleaning my car on my driveway until the owner came by. My first plan was to tell the owner that he or she had blocked the driveway and I had it towed. But as I was outside cleaning my car, it is 22 degrees outside in November, don't ask how Canadian weather works. I saw him coming back with his son. He looked incredibly confused as I was cleaning my car. I noticed him and didn't say anything as he was on his phone, so he actually came to me really upset. He said, "Hey pal, have you seen my van? Are you that much of a damn a-hole to call it for a tow when I was gone 3 minutes?" So my plan changed and I said, "Wait, what van?" And I decided to play dumb. Well, about an hour later he rang my doorbell and asked for details. I told him to F off and came here to write this. Terry is now back in his driveway with his tow truck though, and I plan on giving him a 6-pack of beer for helping me. Neighbors are threatening us and are messing around with cars in the neighborhood. Eastern CT, Connecticut, USA. My apartment manager has issues with 7 out of 8 apartments and the landlord only visits once a year. Things have been escalating recently and her 17-year-old son has threatened 2 of us in different apartments. Both times it came out of nowhere and over nothing. Full on dead eyes rage mode. Last night I got to experience it firsthand. I stepped outside to grab the mail and the manager popped her head out to talk. She accused me of starting crap and that her 17-year-old boy is very angry with me. She then called her son out of the house so he could talk to me. He was red-faced angry already and proceeded to tell me to go to your car or go inside, go the F away. And he then said he was going to beat the crap out of me, take me down and destroy my car. I said something like, "You're showing off in front of your mom, be quiet and don't threaten me." I then walked away to try to get my cat inside and away from him. His mother had to drag him away because he was still going off. I told them I was calling the police, but I never did. I am thinking about making a report today though. I also feel like I should confront the landlord about this. At least 5 to 6 of my neighbors would definitely back me up. We have all had issues. Also, just last week, this young man had a very similar freak out on another neighbor. He was screaming and threatening violence. Thanks in advance, I am still reeling from everything, so I will check back later and edit. Update: things are getting worse. I talked to my landlord and he didn't care very much. He did not offer to help. I then called the police non-emergency line and filled them in on the incident. They said to call back if it happens again and took my name and their name down. Today things got worse though. They appeared to be angrier. My land manager's older son, on probation, yelled at me across the yard, "Effing think," and some stuff before his mom shut him up. He did a burnout down the road today and has generally been notably angry still. This guy just went to court for RAPE and assault and is still on probation. What the hell do I do? I have never used the police for anything before. I don't want to make this worse. I couldn't care about idle threats, but everyone in this family has an assault record. I appreciate any advice, thank you. And a user in the comments suggested, forward all police reports and any other legal paperwork directly to the landlord. Send this by certified mail so that you have proof that the landlord received the paperwork. The manager has no incentive to let the landlord know that any of this is happening and may well twist the facts around if she does tell them. And another user in the comments said, sounds like it is time for some form of restraining or harassment order. You and your neighbors should go together to the clerk's office of your local courthouse or police station. And guys, if you were in this horrific situation with a bunch of absolutely lunatic neighbors, what would you do if you were in OP's shoes? If you got any good ideas, please let us know in the comments. And the next one is the second part of the first story. It is essentially, if you will, a mini saga. It is titled, "A tenant in my building has impersonated my landlord to serve evictions. The landlord had no knowledge." I made a post a month ago about my neighbors threatening me and other tenants in an 8-unit building in Connecticut. And by the way guys, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think CT is Connecticut. Anyway, things have since escalated incredibly. The landlord of this building only visits once a year. I have not seen him for a long time. Myself and every other neighbor in this building have been harassed by a woman and her children that live here. They have threatened violence on many of us. One of her sons threatened to kill my cat. He said he had done it before and had shot and buried another tenant's dog. I didn't take him seriously. My cat is fine, more down below. My neighbor's sister works for a lawyer. That lawyer was used to serve my other neighbor a notice to quit with less than 30 days to leave the apartment for termination for lapse of time. That neighbor then contacted the landlord to confirm it, and the landlord had no knowledge of the eviction. The landlord had that same lawyer write up something stating that there would be no eviction, but the tenant decided to leave anyway because they didn't want the continued harassment from the neighbor. I have been provided a copy of this. A week ago I was served the same thing. A notice to quit in 25 days for termination for lapse of time. I contacted the landlord and he once again had no knowledge of it. I met with the landlord and explained the harassment, threats to myself and my cat. The landlord seemed concerned about the cat thing. Turns out when my neighbor said he killed a dog, it was true. There are witnesses to him grabbing the dog, bringing it into the woods and shooting it. The owners of the dog moved from the apartment soon after and never pressed charges. This was years ago, before he went to jail for assault and strangulation and RAPE. He got out of prison about 6 months ago. After talking face to face with my landlord, it is clear that he is scared of her and her sons. He isn't sure what to do and neither am I. I called the police non-emergency number a few weeks ago when one of her sons was in the driveway jumping around threatening to kill me. The police just said to call back if it happens again. I am currently in contact with the other tenants that were served and 3 tenants from the past that had to leave due to harassment. They want to help as well. Thank you for any advice you may be able to give. My main goal is to avoid an eviction as I cannot see myself moving fast enough. I have savings for another rental and I am looking, but it is really hard to find something in my price range. I am a GI Build student. My income is not great right now. Update again. Hey guys, 3 months have passed since my last posts and obviously there have not been any evictions. As many of you have correctly pointed out, our neighbor falsely impersonated our landlord and he came clear about that after a bunch of my neighbors have bonded together to expose this scumbag. The neighbors then apologized after we all threatened to go to the police together. I have since moved away from this apartment since the neighborhood was a bit rough and there were too many crazy people. Thanks for the advice, Reddit. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I gotta admit that ending is not too surprising for me, because in many of these stories, whether it is neighbors from hell or HOAs, a lot of these people act tough and try to intimidate others, but they would never imagine that actually someone bonds together with others and they collectively go to the police, or at least threaten to do it, which could result in real consequences for the bully. And guys, with this we have reached the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, then please feel free to check out my Patreon over at patreon.com/ripeyoutube or join my YouTube membership program by clicking the join button to get access to even more exclusive videos. Thank you so much for your support and I will see you again tomorrow.